I still remember the excitement bubbling in my chest as I woke up on my 18th birthday. Today was supposed to be the day everything changed. My grandfather Henry had always told me with that knowing smile of his that when I turned 18, I would understand why he had set aside something special, just for me. $500,000 in a trust fund, waiting for this exact moment. As I lay in bed that morning watching the sunlight stream through my window, I had no idea that my parents had already stolen my future to pay for my sister's dreams. Before I tell you what happened on that life-changing day, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button if you have ever felt like the forgotten child in your family, and subscribe to hear more real stories about family betrayal. Because what I'm about to share will make you question everything you think you know about unconditional parental love. The morning started like any birthday should, with the smell of pancakes drifting up from the kitchen. But something felt different as I walked downstairs. My two younger sisters, Isabella and Sophia, were huddled together at the breakfast table, whispering in hushed tones that stopped the moment they saw me. Isabella, 16, and always the dramatic one, could not meet my eyes. Sophia, 14, and usually bouncing with energy, sat unusually still, picking at her food like she had lost her appetite. My mother, Sarah, stood at the stove, but instead of her usual confident cooking, she seemed distracted. The pancakes she was making, normally perfect golden circles, were coming out burnt around the edges. She had been making pancakes for our family every Sunday, for as long as I could remember, and I had never seen her mess them up like this. When she finally placed a plate in front of me, her hands were actually shaking. Dad sat behind his newspaper at the head of the table, but I noticed something odd. He had been on the same page for the entire time I had been downstairs. His coffee sat untouched, growing cold as he pretended to read. Every few minutes he would glance up at me over the top of the paper, then quickly look away when our eyes met. The atmosphere in our house felt thick with tension, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. I tried to shake off the feeling and focus on the excitement of my birthday, but my family's strange behavior made it impossible to ignore the growing knot in my stomach. As I ate, my breakfast, memories of my childhood started flooding back. I remembered how different my birthdays had always been compared to Isabella and Sophia's celebrations. When Isabella turned 16, my parents had thrown her a massive party with a professional DJ and catered food. They had even rented out the community center and invited half the school. For Sophia's 14th birthday, just 3 months ago, they had hired a party planner and transformed our backyard into what looked like a fairy tale garden, complete with string lights and a chocolate fountain. My 16th birthday had been a small family dinner at Olive Garden. When I asked about having a party, my mother had explained that money was tight and we needed to be more practical about celebrations. I had understood then, or at least I thought I had. But it was not just the birthdays. The pattern of favoritism had been there all along, so subtle that I had convinced myself I was imagining it. When Isabella announced she wanted to learn piano, my parents had immediately purchased a brand new grand piano for $15,000. They had transformed the formal dining room into Isabella's personal music room, complete with professional lighting and soundproofing. When Sophia discovered her passion for ballet, they had hired a private instructor who came to our house 3 times a week at $200 per session. They had converted half of our basement into a dance studio, installing professional mirrors and a proper ballet bar. Sophia's dance costumes alone probably cost more than most families spent on clothing in an entire year. But when I had asked to learn guitar during my sophomore year of high school, my parents had taken me to a thrift store and bought me a $50 acoustic guitar with 3 broken strings. They told me that if I was serious about music, I could prove it by learning on that guitar first. I had spent months trying to make that old instrument work, teaching myself from YouTube videos, because professional lessons were apparently not in the budget. The differences had been everywhere once I started paying attention. Isabella and Sophia got the newest iPhones every year when new models came out. I was still using the same phone I had gotten for my 14th birthday, a basic model that could barely run any apps. Their rooms had been redecorated multiple times with expensive furniture and designer bedding. My room still had the same furniture from when I was 12. My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the phone ringing. Dad answered it quickly, almost like he had been expecting the call. I could hear a man's voice on the other end, though I could not make out the words. But I definitely heard my name mentioned several times. "That was Mr. Thompson," Dad said after hanging up his voice, carefully neutral. "He wants to see you this afternoon at 2 o'clock to discuss your trust fund." The mention of the trust fund sent a thrill through me, but I noticed that both my parents tensed when Dad said those words. Mom actually dropped the spatula she was holding, and it clattered loudly on the kitchen floor. Isabella and Sophia exchanged another one of their meaningful looks. "Why does he want to see me alone?" I asked, suddenly feeling suspicious. "Oh, you know how lawyers are," Mom said quickly. Her voice pitched slightly higher than normal. "They have all sorts of procedures and paperwork. Probably just needs your signature on some documents." But something about the way she said it did not ring true. My parents had always been involved in every aspect of my life, from school meetings to doctor appointments. It seemed strange that they would not be included in something as important as accessing my trust fund. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of forced normalcy. My parents gave me my birthday gifts, and the contrast with my sister's recent presents was stark. Isabella had received a brand new MacBook Pro and iPhone for her birthday gifts that had cost over $3,000 combined. Sophia's birthday gifts had included a professional photography session, a shopping spree at an expensive boutique, and a weekend trip to New York City to see Broadway shows. For my 18th birthday, I unwrapped a simple silver necklace that I recognized from the jewelry counter at Target, probably worth about $50, and a birthday card with a generic message about wishing me happiness. The card was not even personalized. It just said, "Happy Birthday," in standard script. My best friend Maya arrived around noon to wish me a happy birthday. She had been my closest friend since middle school, and she knew my family well enough to sense when something was off. "Is everything okay here?" she whispered to me when we went up to my room. "Your parents seem really weird today, and your sisters look like they are about to cry." I shrugged, not wanting to voice my own growing concerns. "I think everyone is just tired. You know how it is." But Maya raised an eyebrow. She had always been perceptive, and she could tell I was not being entirely honest. "Eden, seriously, the tension down there is so thick you could cut it with a knife." "What is going on?" I wished I knew. All I could do was count the hours until my appointment with Mr. Thompson, hoping that everything would become clear once I finally had access to my grandfather's trust fund. Surely, once I had that financial security, the strange dynamics in my family would matter less. I would be able to make my own choices and create my own path. At exactly 2 o'clock, I sat across from Mr. Thompson in his wood-paneled office, surrounded by law books and the smell of old leather. He was a thin man in his 60s, with wire-rimmed glasses, and he had been our family's lawyer for as long as I could remember. But today he seemed uncomfortable, constantly adjusting his tie and avoiding direct eye contact. "Eden." He began slowly pulling out a thick file folder. "I need to discuss your grandfather's trust fund with you. As you know, your grandfather Henry established this trust when you were born, with the intention that you would receive the funds on your 18th birthday." I nodded eagerly, my heart racing with anticipation. $500,000 was more money than I had ever dreamed of having. It would pay for college, give me independence, maybe even allow me to start my own business someday. Mr. Thompson opened the folder and pulled out several documents, but his hands were trembling slightly. "The original amount your grandfather deposited was $500,000 plus interest accumulated over 18 years. By now, it should have grown to approximately $600,000. "Should have," I repeated, catching the ominous tone in his voice. He cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses again. Eden, I have to inform you that the current balance in your trust fund is $25,000. The words hit me like a physical blow. I was sure I had misheard him. I'm sorry, what did you say? $25,000. He repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Your parents, as the trustees of the fund, have been withdrawing money over the past several years. They had legal authority to access the funds for your benefit. But he trailed off, clearly struggling with how to explain. My mind was reeling. I could not process what he was telling me. What do you mean they withdrew money? Where did it go? Mr. Thompson pulled out a stack of papers and spread them across his desk. I have all the documentation here. The withdrawals began when you were 14 years old. The first major withdrawal was $120,000, designated for music education expenses. Music education, I repeated numbly. But I never had expensive music lessons. According to the paperwork, this was for piano lessons, instruments, and equipment for Isabella, he said quietly. The room started spinning around me. I gripped the arms of my chair, trying to steady myself. They used my trust fund money for Isabella's piano lessons. Mr. Thompson nodded grimly and continued reading from the documents. There was another withdrawal of $80,000 for dance education costumes and competition fees for Sophia, $150,000 for educational travel and summer programs in Europe for both girls over 3 years. Each number felt like another punch to my stomach. I thought about Isabella's grand piano, her private lessons, her expensive sheet music collection. I thought about Sophia's professional dance costumes, her private studio, her competition travel expenses. All of it had been paid for with my money, the money my grandfather had specifically saved for my future. There is more, Mr. Thompson continued reluctantly. $75,000 for home improvements, specifically converting the basement and dining room into specialized spaces for the girls' activities, and $50,000 for pageant entry fees, wardrobe, and coaching for Sophia's beauty pageant competitions. I felt sick to my stomach. Every luxury my sisters had enjoyed, every opportunity they had been given, had been stolen from my future. Meanwhile, I had been told repeatedly that there was no money for the things I wanted to do. How is this legal? I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. Mr. Thompson sighed deeply. Your parents were the trustees of the fund. The law allows trustees to make withdrawals for the beneficiary's benefit, but the interpretation of what constitutes benefit can be quite broad. Your parents documented each withdrawal as being for family educational expenses that would indirectly benefit you. But how does paying for Isabella's piano lessons benefit me? That is where things become complicated, he admitted. I have concerns about some of these withdrawals, but your parents are long-standing clients, and they assured me that these expenses were necessary for the family's overall well-being. I stared at the papers spread across his desk, seeing my stolen future laid out in black and white. Did you know this was happening? Did you know they were spending my money? Mr. Thompson removed his glasses and cleaned them slowly, buying himself time. Eden, I want to be honest with you. I had concerns, especially about some of the later withdrawals. Your grandfather specifically told me he was worried something like this might happen. He tried to structure the trust to prevent it, but there are limits to what legal documents can do when parents are determined to access funds. So you knew, I said flatly. You knew they were stealing from me and you did not stop them. I questioned several of the withdrawals, he said defensively. But your parents always had documentation and explanations, and legally, they had the authority. I felt completely betrayed, not just by my parents, but by the entire system that was supposed to protect me. I want to call them, I said. I want my parents here right now. Mr. Thompson nodded and handed me his phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial the number. When my mother answered, I could barely keep my voice steady. I need you and Dad to come to Mr. Thompson's office right now, I said. Honey, what is wrong? You sound upset. Just come, now. I hung up before she could ask any more questions. While we waited, Mr. Thompson showed me more documents. The most devastating discovery was a series of papers with my signature on them, authorizing the withdrawals. But I had never signed anything like that in my life. These signatures, I said, pointing at the documents. I never signed these. Mr. Thompson examined them closely. The signatures appear to be genuine, he said carefully. But I never signed them. I have never even seen these documents before today. An uncomfortable silence settled over the office. The implication hung in the air between us. Someone had forged my signature to steal my inheritance, and the most likely suspects were my own parents. When my parents arrived 20 minutes later, they looked like they had aged years in the few hours since I had seen them at breakfast. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed, and my father's usual confident posture had crumpled into something that looked like defeat. The moment they walked into the office and saw the documents spread across Mr. Thompson's desk, I knew they had been dreading this day for years. The confrontation that followed was unlike anything I had ever experienced. My parents sat across from me in Mr. Thompson's office, and for the first time in my life, I saw them as they really were. Not the loving, supportive parents I had believed them to be, but people who had systematically stolen from their own daughter to fund their favorites. "We can explain everything," my father David said immediately, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then explain," I said, my voice colder than I had ever heard it. "Explain how you spent $475,000 of my inheritance on Isabella and Sophia." My mother, Sarah, started crying immediately. "Eden, you have to understand. We were going to pay it back. We just needed to invest in the girls while they were young, when their talents could really be developed." "My talents?" I asked. "What about my talents did I not deserve the same investment?" "You were different," Dad said, and the words cut deeper than any physical wound could have. "You were always so independent, so self-sufficient. You got good grades without tutoring, you figured things out on your own. Isabella and Sophia needed more guidance, more support." "More money, you mean?" "We knew you would be fine," Mom added through her tears. "You were going to get scholarships for college. You did not need the same kind of help." I stared at them in disbelief. So, because I worked hard and did well in school, I deserved less. Because I did not demand expensive lessons and equipment, you decided I did not matter. The silence that followed was deafening. In that moment, I understood that my parents had never seen me as having the same value as my sisters. I had been the responsible one, the low-maintenance one, the one who did not cost them anything. And somehow, in their twisted logic, that made me less deserving of love and support. "There is something else," I said, pulling out the documents with the forged signatures. "These papers have my signature on them authorizing you to withdraw the money, but I never signed them." My parents exchanged a quick glance, and I saw guilt flash across both their faces. "We can explain that too," Dad said weakly. "I am listening." We signed them for you. We knew you would want us to make the best decisions for the family." "You forged my signature," I said flatly. "You committed fraud to steal from me." "It was not stealing," Mom protested. "We are your parents. We were making decisions in your best interest." "In whose best interest?" I demanded. "Because from where I am sitting, it looks like you made decisions in Isabella and Sophia's best interest, using my money." At that moment, my phone rang. It was Isabella calling. Without thinking, I answered and put it on speaker. "Eden." Isabella's voice was shaky. "Are you at the lawyer's office? Mom texted me and said something about the trust fund." "Yes, I am here," I said, watching my parents' faces as they realized their carefully constructed lies were about to be exposed. "Did you find out about the money?" Isabella asked quietly. "You knew." The betrayal hit me like another wave. "You knew they were using my inheritance." I am sorry." Isabella began crying. "I knew some of it came from your fund, but Mom and Dad said it was okay, because we are family, and family shares everything. They said you would understand because you love us. I felt like I was drowning in the depth of the deception. Even my sisters, who I had always protected and cared for, had been part of this conspiracy against me. And the piano lessons, the grand piano, the summer programs in Europe. All of that came from my grandfather's money. Most of it, Isabella whispered. But, Eden, I needed those things to get into Juilliard. You understand, right? You know how important music is to me. What about what was important to me? I asked. But you are smart, she said, echoing our parents' words. You will figure out how to pay for college. You do not need help like Sophia and I do. I hung up the phone and looked at my parents. In that moment, I saw 18 years of manipulation and favoritism with perfect clarity. They had raised Isabella and Sophia to believe they deserved everything while teaching me to accept crumbs and be grateful for them. I want the money back, I said simply. Eden, be reasonable, Dad said. We cannot just magically produce that much money. The piano alone cost $15,000, and we cannot exactly return it after 4 years. Then sell it. You cannot be serious, Mom said. You would destroy your sister's future over money. You destroyed my future over money, I replied. The difference is, it was my money you destroyed it with. I turned to Mr. Thompson. What are my legal options? He cleared his throat uncomfortably. Given the evidence of fraudulent signatures and misappropriation of trust funds, you would have grounds for a lawsuit. However, I should mention that I cannot represent you in this matter due to my existing relationship with your parents. That is fine, I said. I will find my own lawyer. My parents looked panicked. Eden, you cannot sue your own family, Dad said. Think about what this would do to Isabella and Sophia. Think about what this would do to our reputation in the community. I have been thinking about Isabella and Sophia my entire life, I said, standing up. I have been thinking about this family's reputation and putting everyone else's needs before my own for 18 years. Not anymore. Where will you go? Mom asked desperately. You cannot just leave. You are still our daughter. Am I asked. Because daughters usually get treated like they matter. I gathered up copies of all the documents Mr. Thompson had shown me. I will be in touch through my lawyer. I want $475,000 returned to me within 6 months, or I will see you in court. Eden, please, Mom begged. Can we talk about this at home? Can we work something out as a family? We are not a family, I said quietly. Families do not steal from each other. Families do not lie to each other for years. Families do not sacrifice one child for the benefit of others. As I walked toward the door, Dad made one last desperate attempt. If you do this, if you sue us, you will lose us forever. Is money really more important than your family? I turned back to look at him. You made that choice 4 years ago, when you forged my signature for the first time. You made that choice every time you paid for something for Isabella or Sophia with my inheritance. You made that choice every time you told me we could not afford something I needed while spending thousands on things they wanted. We love you, Mom said through her tears. No, I said. You loved the idea of having an easy child who would not cause you any trouble. You loved having someone you could take from without consequences. But you never loved me enough to treat me fairly. I walked out of that office and did not look back. For the first time in my life, I was completely on my own, but I was also completely free from the illusion that I had ever mattered to the people who were supposed to love me most. The first person I called after leaving Mr. Thompson's office was my great-uncle Robert, my grandfather Henry's younger brother. Uncle Robert had always been the family rebel, the one who spoke uncomfortable truths at family gatherings. He was also the only relative who had ever suggested that my parents' treatment of me was unfair. I have been waiting for this call for years, Uncle Robert said after I explained what had happened. Your grandfather warned me this might happen. He tried to structure the trust to prevent it, but he also knew your parents well enough to fear they would find a way around the restrictions. Uncle Robert lived alone in a small house across town, and he immediately offered to let me stay with him while I figured out my next steps. Your grandfather would roll over in his grave if he knew what they did with that money, he said, as he helped me move my belongings out of my parents' house. The confrontation when I came home to pack was brutal. Isabella and Sophia both cried and begged me to reconsider pursuing legal action. Sophia, who had always been the more manipulative of my sisters, tried to guilt me into backing down. "If you sue Mom and Dad, I will lose everything," she said. "I will have to quit dance. I will have to give up my dream of becoming a professional dancer." "Your dream was built on stealing my future," I replied as I folded clothes into boxes. "If your talent is real, you will find another way." "But I am only 14, she protested. "I cannot get a job to pay for lessons myself." "I have been planning to get a job to pay for college since I was your age," I said. "Welcome to reality." Isabella's approach was different. She tried to appeal to our sisterly bond. "We have always been close," she said. "Do not let money come between us. Money is not more important than family." "You are right," I agreed. "Money is not more important than family. That is why I cannot understand why our parents valued money more than treating their children fairly." My parents made several attempts to negotiate, but their offers were insulting. They suggested I could have the $25,000 that remained in the trust fund, plus they would pay for my first year of college. In exchange, I would sign a document agreeing not to pursue legal action for the rest of the money. "You are asking me to accept 5% of what you stole from me," I said. "And you want me to be grateful for it." Uncle Robert helped me find an excellent attorney who specialized in trust and estate fraud. Sarah Martinez, ironically sharing my mother's first name, was a sharp woman in her 40s who took one look at my case and immediately began building a lawsuit. "This is one of the clearest cases of trustee fraud I have ever seen," she told me during our first meeting. "The forged signatures alone are enough for a criminal case, though pursuing criminal charges would be a separate decision from the civil lawsuit." The legal process took almost 2 years, during which my relationship with my immediate family completely deteriorated. The local newspaper picked up the story when the lawsuit was filed, and suddenly everyone in our small town knew about the family scandal. Isabella and Sophia faced social consequences at school. Some of their friends' parents questioned whether they should continue associating with children whose family was involved in such a public legal battle. Isabella's piano teacher, when she learned that lessons had been paid for with stolen money, refused to continue teaching her until the legal issues were resolved. My parents tried to paint me as a vindictive daughter who was destroying the family over greed. They told anyone who would listen that I was being influenced by Uncle Robert, who had always been jealous of my father's success. They claimed I was having some kind of breakdown and could not think clearly. But the evidence was too overwhelming for their narrative to hold up. Bank records, forged documents, and testimony from Mr. Thompson all supported my case. More damaging evidence emerged during the discovery process, including email exchanges between my parents discussing how to handle Eden when I turned 18. In one particularly damning email from my father to my mother, he wrote, "We need to have a story ready for when Eden finds out about the trust fund. Maybe we can convince her that family investments are more important than individual inheritance." My mother had replied, "She has always been reasonable. I think she will understand that we had to prioritize Isabella and Sophia's opportunities while they were young. Eden can take out student loans if she needs to." Reading those emails was devastating, but also liberating. They confirmed what I had suspected, but never wanted to believe my parents had always seen me as less important than my sisters. During this period, I focused on building a new life for myself. I got a job at a local coffee shop where I met people who knew nothing about my family situation and valued me for who I was, rather than how much trouble I caused. I enrolled in online business courses and discovered I had a talent for financial planning and management. I also joined a support group for people who had experienced financial abuse from family members. I learned that my situation, while extreme, was not uncommon. Many people had stories about parents or siblings who had stolen inheritance money, emptied college funds, or committed identity theft against their own relatives. Through the support group, I began to understand that the financial theft was just one symptom of a larger pattern of emotional abuse and favoritism that had shaped my entire childhood. I started therapy to work through the complex feelings of grief, anger, and loss that came with realizing my family had never truly valued me. The lawsuit finally concluded in my favor 18 months after I filed it. The court ordered my parents to return $400,000 to me, though the judge acknowledged that some of the money could not be recovered because it had been spent on consumable items like travel and competition fees. My parents were forced to sell their house and downsize significantly. Isabella's grand piano was sold, along with most of Sophia's expensive dance equipment. Both girls had to transfer to public schools because my parents could no longer afford private school tuition. The most difficult part was watching my sisters adjust to their new reality. Isabella, who had been groomed to believe she was destined for greatness, struggled with the loss of her private lessons and expensive instruments. But she surprised me by eventually thriving in the music program at her public school, where she learned to appreciate music for its own sake rather than as a path to prestige. Sophia initially rebelled against the changes, blaming me for ruining her life. But over time, she discovered that she genuinely loved dance, even without the expensive costumes and private studios. She joined the dance team at her public school and found joy in the collaborative aspect of performance that she had never experienced in individual competitions. 2 years after the lawsuit was settled, Isabella reached out to me. She was a senior in high school, then preparing for college auditions. "I want to apologize," she said when we met at a neutral location, the coffee shop where I worked. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened, and I realize how wrong it all was." "You were just a kid," I told her. "You believed what our parents told you." "But I should have questioned it," she said. "I should have wondered why you never got the same opportunities. I should have stood up for you." We talked for hours that day, and I learned that Isabella had been carrying tremendous guilt about benefiting from the stolen money. She had even considered not pursuing music at all because she felt like her opportunities were tainted. "Do not give up music," I told her. "What our parents did was wrong, but your love for music is real. Just make sure you are pursuing it for yourself, not because someone else expects it of you." Sophia took longer to reach out, but when she did, her apology was even more heartfelt. "I was such a spoiled brat," she admitted. "I thought I deserved everything I got because I was talented. But I realize now that talent without character means nothing." My parents eventually reached out as well after almost 3 years of silence. They asked to meet with me, claiming they wanted to make amends. I agreed to meet them at a restaurant, maintaining the neutral ground that had become necessary for any interaction with my family. They looked older, wearier than I remembered. The stress of the lawsuit and its aftermath had clearly taken a toll on them. My father had lost weight and developed gray hair almost overnight. My mother seemed smaller, somehow less confident than the woman who had always been so sure of her decisions. "We want to apologize," my mother said, her voice small and uncertain. "We realize now that what we did was wrong. We convinced ourselves we were doing what was best for the family," my father added. "We thought you were strong enough to succeed without help, and Isabella and Sophia needed more support." I listened to their apology, but I could tell it was motivated more by regret about the consequences than genuine understanding of how their actions had affected me. "I appreciate you saying that," I said carefully. "But I need you to understand that this was not just about money. You taught me that I mattered less than my sisters. You taught them that they deserved more than other people. Those lessons go much deeper than financial theft." "Can you ever forgive us?" my mother asked, tears in her eyes. "I have forgiven you," I said truthfully. "But forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean pretending this never happened. And it does not mean going back to the way things were before. We maintained occasional contact after that, but our relationship never fully recovered. Too much trust had been broken. Too many lies had been told. I realized that some relationships cannot survive certain betrayals, no matter how much love might still exist underneath the hurt. With the money from the lawsuit settlement, I was able to pay for college without taking on debt and start a small financial consulting business afterward. I specialized in helping people protect their assets from family members who might take advantage of them, drawing on my own painful experience to help others avoid similar situations. Isabella ended up getting a partial scholarship to a good music school, not the prestigious Juilliard she had always dreamed of, but a place where she could pursue her passion without the crushing pressure of unrealistic expectations. She learned to love music again, rather than seeing it as a burden she had to carry to justify her worth. Sophia discovered that she preferred teaching dance to performing it. She studied education in college and became a dance instructor for children, finding fulfillment in nurturing other people's talents, rather than pursuing fame for herself. The most important lesson I learned through this entire experience was that love is not just a feeling, it is a choice that must be demonstrated through actions. My parents may have felt love for me, but they consistently chose to act in ways that prioritized my sister's immediate wants over my long-term needs. I learned that standing up for yourself is not selfish, even when it hurts other people. I learned that fairness is not negotiable, and that being the easy child does not make you less deserving of care and investment. Most importantly, I learned that you cannot force people to value you appropriately, but you can choose to value yourself enough to walk away from situations that diminish you. Today, I run a successful business, helping families navigate inheritance and trust issues before they become sources of conflict. I have built a chosen family of friends who appreciate me for who I am not, for how little trouble I cause them. I still think about my grandfather Henry sometimes, and I like to believe he would be proud of how I fought to reclaim the future he had tried to secure for me. His money gave me independence, but the strength to fight for it came from somewhere deeper inside myself. The scars from my family's betrayal will always be with me, but they have also made me stronger and more compassionate. They have taught me to recognize my own worth and to never accept less than I deserve from the people who claim to love me. That is the real inheritance my grandfather left me. Not just the money in a trust fund, but the knowledge that I am valuable enough to fight for. What about you? Have you ever felt like the forgotten child in your family? Have you experienced favoritism that left lasting scars? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Please give this video a like if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories about family dynamics and personal growth, and share this with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better than settling for crumbs of love. Thank you for listening to my story and for supporting others who have walked similar paths. Remember that your worth is not determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to treat yourself. Until next time, take care of yourselves and know that you deserve all the love and respect in the world.